What is up, everybody? Welcome to Football Diehards and welcome to Week 10. Really looking forward to this slate. I'm here as always on a Sunday with Jamie. Jamie, what is up you looking forward to today?
Absolutely. The week has changed drastically as we've gone along, so looking forward to breaking it down with you.
Yep, for sure. We'll go game by game. We'll talk some strategy. We'll talk some ownership as well. And like Jamie said, a lot has changed. Lots of things have opened up. So I say we start with the very first game as always. We have Detroit going against Pittsburgh. I'll let you kick this one off, Jamie. What are you looking for? I think you're probably more on the Pittsburgh side with me here.
Yep, I was a lot heavier on it all week, though, until Roethlisberger got ruled out last night after being placed on the COVID list. So, I mean, I still think that Najee Harris is, a top 3 running back with top 1 overall potential here. Just based on the fact that Juju and Chase Claypool are out. It's an elite matchup against Detroit, who gives up the second most fantasy points per game to running backs. You got to figure they'll lean on him a little bit more with Mason Rudolph, and he'll get more red zone equity as well with Claypool and Juju out. A little bit lower on the passing game now, though, with Rudolph there. I think you still can play people like Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth just because of their price tags and expected target shares. But, if you're kind of going for a tiebreaker between, I don't know, like Deontay and Keenan Allen or something along those lines, I would probably lean the non-Pittsburgh pass catcher at this point. Where are you sitting on Pittsburgh with the latest news?
Yeah, I don't know what to think of it because Ben, like he's looked horrible this year for the most part. Could it help them a little bit with Rudolph? I'm not too sure. I personally think it does hurt him a little bit, but again, Ben's been so bad, so I really don't know. And Johnson was somebody I was really looking at up until the Ben news. He's 6,800. Like you mentioned, there's no Juju, there's no Claypool. I think that's phenomenal for him. But with no Ben, I'm just not as sure as I was. And then Freiermuth as well was a guy that I was going to be like nearly 100% owned on. But again, with no Big Ben, I don't know how much I like that now. But yeah, I think Harris is still great. 7,900 going against Detroit. Great matchup. They're at home, favored. Detroit has one of the best run defenses, one of the worst run defenses in the league. So I think, yeah, it's a tough one. I think I'm not going to completely go away from Johnson and Freiermuth, but I think it might hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all fine still. But I do think where I was leaning their way, I'm kind of leaning the way of comparable plays a little bit more. Like, I think Jonathan Taylor strikes me as a little bit safer as a running back now in that range than Najee Harris, and I was back and forth on the two. And, like you said, Freiermuth, there's comparable tight ends next to him. So I think you can play him, and I think you can go away from him too. Where are you looking? How about Detroit? Where are you looking for them?
Nothing. Nothing at all, really. I don't have any interest in the wide receivers. I mean, Swift's fine, but I just like so many guys that are priced up above him or below him. So on Detroit, it's nothing for me. Anything stick out to you?
I do like Swift. I'm probably not going to get to him, just because kind of what you said, that if I'm paying for, into that almost 7,000 range, I'd rather find a little bit more for the guys above him. But Jamal Williams is out again, and he was running over 70% of snaps anyway. He busted in that spot last time, but he still is, a top 3 in running back targets and running back receiving yards. And you figure with Pittsburgh's pass rush, they'll be leaning to that check down. So I think if you play Swift in cash or GPP, it's fine. He's looking at 8% ownership, which is 10th among running backs, ahead of Aaron Jones, ahead of Dalvin Cook. I think I'd prefer them to him in the same spot, but I like Swift, sure, and especially on DraftKings and PPR.
Yep, I'm with you. I like him as well, but yeah, tons of things will open up throughout the week where I just don't know if I'll get to him this week. But Harris is coming in at the second highest owned at 21%. So a lot of people on Harris, including me. But yeah, like you mentioned, Harris or Taylor, I'd probably go Taylor as well. But let us keep moving on to the next game, and we have Tampa Bay going against Washington. And yeah, I was really high on Tampa Bay earlier in the week, and I still am somewhat high. Tom Brady, I think, at quarterback is fine. I really like the matchup against Washington. Chris Godwin is questionable. He is expected to play, but they said they're going to test him out before the game. So I do think he does play. If he does play, I think he's in a really good spot here, 7,100. There is no Brown. There still is no Gronk. I think Godwin and Evans are going to be the two guys I'm looking at. Pretty expensive, but man, this is a really good matchup against Washington. So I'm going to be mixing and matching those guys. Any interest in anything else on the Tampa Bay side, and your thoughts on Brady, Godwin, and Evans?
I think in cash games on both sites, I'm going to be playing Evans regardless. Just based on what you said, with the matchup against Washington is just so incredibly good for secondaries. And Evans is a good play anyway. Even if Godwin does play, and if anything kind of mid game happens, or if Godwin is limited at all with his injury, he barely practiced all week, so it is a legitimate injury. Then I think you get an eruption spot from Evans, but I think he could have it anyway. And at 6,900, I'm perfectly fine throwing him into those cash lineups and with Brady stacks and GPPs. I think Tyler Johnson at 3,300 is an interesting GPP pivot. He would have been obviously a lot better if Godwin winds up sitting, which it doesn't look like he's going to do. But, I mean, they didn't activate Scotty Miller from IR, and you mentioned Antonio Brown and Gronk are both out. So we're probably going to see him running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, and you know how Tampa spreads the ball around. So I kind of like him at 3,300. And you can say the same for O.J. Howard and GPPs at 2,700 tight end. This team passes so much, and it's such a good matchup against Washington. I could see him putting up 40 in this one. So, all systems go on the Tampa offense for me. Any interest in Fournette for you?
No, not really. My 6,100, I think, is in a great spot. It's just, again, I really do like guys like Harris. I like guys like Taylor. And then there's two or three cheap running backs that have opened up that I do like a lot more. So, yeah, I think Fournette's fine. Especially this week, but I probably won't get there myself. On the Washington side, I think McLaurin's fine, 7,600. There are some other plays I do like better in that range, but great matchup against Tampa Bay. Like we say, their run defense is good, but their pass defense is not so good. I do expect them to be trailing. I expect them to be throwing the ball. I think McLaurin is interesting. So he's going to be somebody that I'm kind of looking at. We see that Mike Evans is coming in at about 12% ownership. Chris Godwin, 11% ownership. I'm trying to see where McLaurin about 6% ownership, which makes him the 20th highest owned wide receiver. Anything for you on the Washington side? Not a ton sticking out to me, but I think McLaurin was the one guy I was looking at.
Yeah, that's probably all I'd be looking at too. I guess Ricky Seals-Jones. We talked about potential pivots off of Freiermuth in that range, 3,700. I guess he's fine. But, Taylor Heineke's bad.
Yeah.
And the Washington's offense is going to continue to sputter. I thought he was better than he is, but he isn't. They're missing Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you can almost be assured they're going to be hard looking for a quarterback going into next season. The backfield's a mess right now, so yeah, I'm not on Washington's side. If you stack Tampa Bay and you want to bring him back with someone, I would say do McLaurin. Maybe a deep shot on McKissick if they're playing from behind the whole game and he gets more passing usage, especially if Gibson's injury is still lingering. But no, I'm not interested in the Washington side much here.
Yep, I am with you there, but let's keep moving on to the next game, and we have Buffalo going against the Jets here. And yeah, for me, I'm kind of interested in the Buffalo side here. So Buffalo looked awful. Josh Allen looked pretty bad, only scoring 12.56 DraftKings points. A game that had no touchdowns. The Bills only scored 6 points. And I think that it could be a very good time to go right back to the well here. I like the matchup against the Jets. And I just don't think that Josh Allen and the Bills could look any worse than how they did last week. I think it's a great bounce back spot. And you take a look at Allen and what he's did throughout the year. That was one of his worst game. That was his worst game of the year, but he's been very consistent. The other game that he had that was poor was in week 1. Was 18 points. Week 2 was 17 points. But other than that, he's been on fire. So I think I'm going to go back to Josh Allen this week against the Jets. I don't mind Josh Allen, Diggs, Beasley, somebody that I really do like, 5,200. And we see that Josh Allen's coming in at the second highest own which makes sense. He burned a lot of people last week, including me, but I think I'm going to go right back to him. How about you on the Bill side?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's no real reason to think that the Bills' offense is all of a sudden just going to struggle. I think it's just a small slump right now. The Jets are 29th in yards per play allowed. Their Bills are, despite the struggles, still second in the league in pass rate over expectation over the last 4 games. And Allen runs. So, if Allen is probably my QB1 this week and when I finalize the rankings. And his price has gone down a little bit too. So, yeah, I'm with you on the Bills offense.
Yep, I think Allen is going to be my cash quarterback this week as well. On the Jets side, not a ton that really does interest me. Anything for you on the Jets side? Not a ton sticking out for me.
No, and just to point out with that the Bills have allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. So just a quick side note on, we talk DraftKings mostly, but for FanDuel players that cap their defensive price tags, the Bills at 5,000 is a really good spot to go. Especially with the line mismatch, the Jets offensive line versus the Bills defensive line. I would not be surprised to see a shutout or 3 points or 6 points scored by the Jets this week. So no interest in any offensive players on the Jets side. Can't pay for the Bills defense on DraftKings, but on FanDuel certainly.
Yep, on DK they are 4,000. If I have the salary, I'll go up and get them, but I typically do pay down at defense. But we'll keep moving on to the next game. We have Atlanta going against Dallas, which should be a very fun one. What are you looking at this one? Let's start on the Dallas side.
Yeah, you're right. This is a real fun one, and similarly to last week, the Cowboys. I mentioned this on Sirius last night with Bob and Mike of the Football Diehards. The Cowboys seem to just keep being underpriced on DraftKings. Dak Prescott is not on the injury report anymore. Atlanta is last in sack rate and QB hit rate. Michael Gallup is back to spread the offense out a little bit more. Blake Jarwin being on IR has Dalton Schultz as an every week tight end one now. So, I think any of these pieces are cash viable. I think Dak Prescott at 6,900 is the most cash viable. That's a really nice price on DraftKings for a QB of his caliber against a matchup like this where Dallas has a team total of 32. But I think you can make a case for any of these guys to be fit into any format. Where are you on Dallas, and what about Atlanta on the other side?
Yeah, I'm just like you. Like every single piece, pretty much on Dallas sticks out. I think Dak's a great play at his price tag. Elliott's a good play. We have Cooper, who's 6,200. I think Cooper's way too cheap. He's probably one of my favorites out of the game there. And then Michael Gallup, who's coming back 4,000. I like him a lot. And then Dalton Schultz, he's 5,000. So yeah, I'm really high on this Dallas Cowboys offense this week. Just gonna be mixing and matching for the most part. On the Atlanta side, a couple pieces do stick out. Patterson was somebody that I liked earlier in the week, but since a lot of the values open up at running back, I don't see myself getting to him a ton. But Patterson's been like really consistent this year. I think 6,600 is fine. But there are running backs I do like more. After that, I don't have too much interest in anybody else. Maybe Russell Gage 5,000 is interesting. Kyle Pitts is okay, but don't really see myself paying up a tight end. So yeah, I'm more so on the Dallas side myself. Pretty much every guy on Dallas is sticking out to me.
Yep, and I agree with you on Patterson. He was I always make an early cash placeholder in the week and kind of build off of that. And he was in the original one, but with the values that have opened up, there's just really not a ton of logic to getting into that mid-range for him in cash. Great for GPP, but I don't need him in cash anymore either.
Yep, I can agree with that. We do see Dak Prescott coming in at the third highest owned quarterback at 11%. Yeah, Dak is somebody that I do like a lot in terms of a tournament quarterback. I think for cash, like I said, I'm going with Josh Allen. But if you told me you like Dak in cash, I wouldn't hate that at all. But we'll keep moving on. And we have New Orleans going against Tennessee. So There has been some serious value open up throughout the week. There is no Alvin Kamara, so that does open up a lot of things for Mark Ingram. He's 4,500, and he is coming in with a ton of ownership, and rightfully so. And yeah, I mean, he's somebody that I'm going to have a lot of because I really do like Mark Ingram in this spot. Great matchup against Tennessee. And then other than that, I think that's about it. Like on the Saints, it's just Mark Ingram from year past. Anything stick out to you else on the Saints, and how much Mark Ingram are you going to have?
Yeah, he's a lock in cash, and I'm going overweight in GPP. I mean, it's really not often that you get a workhorse running back in a run-centric scheme for 4,500. So, yeah, I don't really see fading Ingram that much today. He's, like another value running back we'll talk about. He just fits the lineup so well, and he lets you pay up for wide receiver and for quarterback and for another expensive running back alongside the two values. So, yeah, Ingram for sure. He's the only Saint I'm interested in, though.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like earlier in the week, I was like really focused on going up and getting Taylor. I was focused on going up and getting Harris. I was focused on going up and getting McCaffrey and trying to get like all three of them or at least two or three of them in my lineup. But now I'm just, getting both Ingram and another guy we'll talk about as terms of value, and then just mixing and matching like a Taylor, like a McCaffrey, like a Harris. But yeah, Mark Ingram really does open up a lot of things in your lineups. Anything else on this game? Anything on the Tennessee side? For me, I think AJ Brown really does stick out. We see that Julio Jones is on the IR, so I think Brown a 7,800 is in a pretty good spot here, right?
Yeah, for sure. And again, for FanDuel players, he's a much better price tag over there. So he's going to be a lot heavier owned, I think, on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, unless I'm misreading the ownership here. Yeah, so it looks like he's got double the ownership on FanDuel that he does on DraftKings, and that's due to he's got an even cheaper price tag on FanDuel with a looser pricing scheme. But yeah, AJ Brown should be in a great spot, and I also think that it's the natural thing to play the Tennessee defense here at 2,600. Even if you're playing Mark Ingram, they are the top-ranked defense over the last 5 weeks, and they lead in sack rate as well. They shouldn't be 2,600, truth be told here. And then they're facing the Saints, who really only have one playmaker on that team in Kamara, and he isn't playing. So that's kind of the one I think you set it and forget it in DraftKings DFS lineups.
Yep, I think that is a good call there. But yeah, I think we touched on about everything for this game. So we'll move on to the next one. We have Jacksonville going against Indianapolis. We'll let you kick this one off. There's a guy on Indy that I really like. A lot of people really like. I'll kind of let you talk about him.
Yeah, so, I mean, Jonathan Taylor is great. Jacksonville is better against the run than a team of their record would seem. They've only given up 3.5 yards per carry, which is interesting to me. But Taylor is averaging 6.7 yards per carry over his last 6 games, with 9 touchdowns. So that's one of those matchup proof guys, like if you wouldn't bench Derrick Henry, a healthy Derrick Henry against this Jacksonville team if they were playing him, and you don't do it with Taylor either. The only thing I will say, if you tell me that you like Najee Harris better for the better matchup, and if you tell me that you rather spend the extra 300 for Christian McCaffrey with the PPR upside, I wouldn't argue it. Taylor does strike me as having the highest chance of RB1 overall upside this week. I think the thing you want to look for the most is if Marlon Mack is another healthy scratch. If he is, then I don't really see any reason in fading Taylor. What do you think about Taylor?
Yep, I like Taylor a lot. Yeah, for me, if I had to rank the top 3, and you got Harris up there, you got Taylor up there, and then you have McCaffrey. Those are my top 3 personally. If I had to rank them, I'd probably put Taylor in the number 1 spot. I mean, they're at home. They're going against Jacksonville. Phenomenal matchup. They're favored. I mean, everything just is pointing upwards for Jonathan Taylor, and he's just been on fire as of late. I mean, the last game where he did not perform well was back in like week 3, and since then he's had consistent 20-plus point DraftKings performances. He's been on a roll. He's been on fire. They're getting him the ball. I really don't see why Jonathan Taylor should not go out here and smash today. So yeah, I'm really high on Taylor myself. We do see that he is coming in as the 5th highest owned, about a 13% ownership, which is not terrible. But yeah, other than that, on the Colts side, not much else sticks out. I think for me, it's just going to be Taylor on the Colts, and on the flip side for Jacksonville, not a ton sticks out as well. But I think for tight end Dan Arnold, 3,500, he's getting a bunch of targets week in and week out. He's really cheap. So I think Arnold and Taylor are the two pieces I like in this game.
Yeah. Arnold, with the news of Roethlisberger not playing, I've pretty much, pivoted my cash tight end from Freiermuth to Arnold on both sites. And I'm fine with that. 90, he's averaged 7.5 targets per game since joining the Jaguars. So the Colts have play that zone defense, which allows the under routes to tight ends. They've given up the second most fantasy points per game to the position. So 3,500, that's a pretty easy one. I do like Pittman also on the Colts side in GPPs at 6,300. I think a lot of focus will be on the run. Oh, no, I'm wrong. Pittman is coming in as the 4th highest owned wide receiver. So you can play him in both formats at that kind of ownership. Yeah, he's taken over. T.Y. Hilton being back does not matter for Michael Pittman. He is the wide receiver 1 there. He is moving into like dynasty wide receiver 1 territory at this point on that team. So I think he's fine, but Taylor would definitely be my main focus on the Colts too.
Yep, I like that Pittman call as well. But we'll keep moving on, and now we have Cleveland going against the Patriots here. I'll let you kick this one off. Anything sticking out to you on and anything in this game?
Dearness Johnson, and that's it. He is going to be massive chalk, and it's not one that you should be fading. I think you play both of Johnson and Ingram in your cash lineups, but if you create a lineup that you like better that's fading one of them, Johnson is the one you keep, I think, over Ingram. Chubb, Hunt, Felton, and John Kelly are all out for Cleveland. So this is like Johnson's season on steroids here. Last time he had this role, and even when Kelly and Felton were playing the last time he had this role, and he still destroyed Denver. 6.6 yards per carry he ran. The Patriots are terrible against the run, giving up the 8th most fantasy points per game and over 5 yards per carry. I can't see a scenario, barring injury, that Johnson doesn't blow past his price tags on these sites. So I don't have any lineups except for a couple of GPPs where I kind of differentiated and paid up for 3 expensive running backs where I don't have Johnson in it.
Yep, and I 110% agree. You brought up all the main points I was thinking of. Basically, he's like the only running back on Cleveland, and then also we did see what he did the last time he got the starting role. I think he had, I forget the exact amount, but he had like a couple, what do you have, like a 27.8 DraftKings points. Yeah, so I don't know if he's going to do all that, but it wouldn't shock me. Yeah, 4,700 for Johnson here. We do see why he is the first projected highest owned by a significant margin, coming in at about 31%. And yeah, I like what you brought up. And in cash games, I did myself go with Johnson and then Ingram, and I also went with Jonathan Taylor. But don't mind a Johnson, Ingram, Harris. Don't mind a Johnson, Ingram, McCaffrey as well. Those are kind of the lineups I'm going to be looking at this week. But yeah, it's really hard to get away from Johnson. And then outside of that, no really interest in any other guy on the Browns. I mean, I think going back to Landry could be interesting. 5,200. I was on him a bit last week, kind of disappointed. I don't mind going back to him, but I don't love it. And then on the Patriots side, really nothing sticking out. Anything sticking out to you on the Patriots side?
No. I assume that I'll get questions leading up to post about Ramondre Stevenson being the lead back there, as long as we see that he is actually active, which it looks like he's going to be. They still have Brandon Bolden and they still have J.J. Taylor. They're not it's not the type of team that just hands the rookie the keys there, especially when he's been a healthy scratch many times this year for fumbling and whatnot. I don't really see the upside of him. I think if there weren't other values, he would be a fun play, but I don't see him outscoring Dearness Johnson and Mark Ingram to the point where you want to get leverage there. So, no, I don't really have any Patriots that I'm going to be playing this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. If we did not have a Johnson down at 4,700, if we did not have an Ingram, then I would think about it. But yeah, since we have those two, I just don't see myself getting there myself. But we'll keep moving on. We have Carolina going against Arizona. Anything sticking out to you in this game?
Um, well, two things with this. We got to watch for the Arizona injury report. It's starting to look like Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins are going to sit again. So that changes, and Rondale Moore is questionable too. So that kind of changes the dynamic of Arizona completely. I'm really not looking at anyone on that side but James Conner, and even him I have less of than I thought I was going to coming into this week, just given how good he's been. Um, Carolina is a still a tough run defense. I see some outs where he doesn't finish as well as he's projecting and with the ownership he's projecting. So definitely Connor is a good play. But he kind of falls into that Swift category we talked about before where I like him, especially at his price tag, but I'd rather pay up for a little bit more stable or a little bit more stability there. And a little bit more less volatility in the overall offense with all the injuries coming in with Arizona. And then on the other side, I mean, I don't get his ownership. I mean, maybe you can shed some light on this, but I understand that Christian McCaffrey was somewhat limited last week, but he still went for 15 points. He's at 3% at 8,400, and this is a guy that was routinely 10,000 when he's healthy, and he is 8,400, presumably getting a higher workload against a bad run defense with PJ Walker at quarterback, who has a career 5.4 yards per target. I mean, what am I missing with McCaffrey here?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't. I think it might be because there's like so many great plays this week at running back. We have Harris, we have Jonathan Taylor, Dalvin Cook, and then down low we talked about the value play. So maybe that could be why. But even then, like it just doesn't make much sense. I mean, you talked about it. McCaffrey is a guy that typically we'd see him near that 10K mark. He was 9.9K in week 2. So yeah, I mean last week, yeah, we all know he was going to be limited. He actually did more than I expected him to do. He had 18 total touches, which is, again, a lot more than I thought. So, yeah, if he's going to be full go this week, I mean, 8,400, it's just way too cheap. So, yeah, especially taking a look at that ownership, it's really hard not to get to McCaffrey in tournaments for sure. So, I'm going to be making it a priority to get him into tournaments. I think he has, if he's full go, he has one of the best, if not the best, upside on the slate. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, again, it makes no sense to me as well.
Yeah, and I want to play him in cash, but I mean, I just at 3% owned when we're getting Najee at 19% and Taylor at 13% and even Eckler at 13%. Um, I mean, I think I'm probably going to wind up being like you, where I just go overweight in GPP on him, which I have done. But it just seems like such a gift in cash, and I don't I don't often like going the contrarian route in cash, and it looks like he is that. So I don't know. It's annoying to me that he's not getting ownership.
Yeah, I kind of thought it would bump up, as the week went on, but no, I think it even went like down a little bit. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but we'll see what happens there. Anything else stick out to you in this game?
No, I'm not interested in the passing game for Seattle at all. PJ Walker is horrible. Um, I've moved DJ Moore significantly down my rankings for this week, and Robbie Anderson was never up there to begin with. So no, and then the Arizona side is just too questionable right now with the injuries.
Yep, I can agree with that, but we'll keep moving on to the next game. And we see that it is Minnesota going against the Chargers here. So yeah, on the Chargers side for me, this is where I'm going to have most of my action. Yeah, don't mind going to some Herbert at 7,300. I really do like the matchup against Minnesota. I think Eckler is definitely in play. I like him earlier in the week, but now I'm really making it a priority to get McCaffrey, Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and then some of those cheap guys we talked about. So don't know if I'm going to get too much Eckler. You kind of disappointed last week, but I do think he's a good play again this week. And we do see that Eckler is coming in at about the fourth highest on running back as well. And then, interestingly enough, we see that Mike Williams, for the first time, and it seems like a while, he's actually priced less than Keenan Allen. I don't know if it was like that last week. I think this might be the first week in a while where he's actually priced less than Keenan Allen. So I think that's where I might want to take a couple shots on Mike Williams. Kind of has that boom or bust feel, though, where he can go out there and get like a 40-point game like he did against Cleveland, or come out there and get like a 3-point game like he did against the Patriots, a 4-point game against Baltimore. Been on a little bit of a skid lately, but I think going to Mike Williams in some tournaments is not a terrible idea. And then I talk about him every single week. I don't think there's a week where I have not talked about him, and it's going to be Keenan Allen, who is questionable. They're expecting him to play. He's 7,000. He's going to be safe for a ton of targets, a ton of receptions. I think is a good cash play week in and week out. So how about you on the Chargers side, and then anything sticking out on the Minnesota side for you?
Yeah, you said it all with the Chargers, and they're my favorite team to stack this week. I mentioned this on the radio last night too, but the Vikings are missing Danielle Hunter, Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith. Right there, that's their three top defenders. Throw in Michael Pierce is out as well, and Anthony Barr is out. So that you could argue they're missing their top 5 defenders against the Chargers. So I have kind of dismissed Justin Herbert this week, and it was a mistake to do that. So I'm, once we start setting final lineups here, I am going to go revisit putting him in there. And as we're looking, it looks like he's the highest owned quarterback right now. So that's interesting, and it's kind of rightfully so. You said everything you could there with the Chargers, and I'm with you, 100% on Allen as a cash play. I think you're right that this is the week we could see that bounce back from Mike Williams. Eckler is perfectly fine in all formats. As far as the Vikings go, I really like Dalvin Cook a lot in GPPs this week, and part of me wishes these value running backs didn't come out because, I had a plan to pay up for these running backs in both cash and GPP with some cheaper wide receivers in that 5K range. But, it is what it is at this point. But we saw Dalvin Cook get over 80% of snaps for the first time all season last week. The Chargers are an awful run defense. Only the Jets and Lions have given up more fantasy points per running backs. So this feels like one of those, 150, 170 yards from scrimmage and 1 or 2 touchdowns games from Cook in this one. So if you are stacking Chargers, he is my favorite bringback. I think he's fine on his own in GPPs. Cash, I think it's a little more sensible to go with Taylor and Najee with the ownership. But Cook kind of falls into that category as well, as he seems too low owned, and I guess the same reasons you gave for McCaffrey is the same as goes for him. You agree, Cook? And how about any of the passing game?
Yep, Cook up there would be like my fourth favorite play, behind Harris, behind Taylor, behind McCaffrey. But I think it's a really nice pivot off of those guys, coming in about 6% ownership. And then, I think the passing game's fine as always. Justin Jefferson, 7,700, expensive, but he's been very consistent this year. I think he's fine. And then we also have Thielen, 6,700, a little pricey in his own right, but I think he's fine as well. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Cook would be my preferred run back if I was to pick any at all. And then Jefferson, probably my second favorite. So I'm kind of, I don't mind the receivers for Minnesota. I think they're in play, but I don't know how much I'm going to get to them. Conklin could be an interesting play at tight end. He's very cheap, 3,400. I think he's okay. Anything else on the Minnesota side for you?
Yeah, I agree with Conklin. I've set back 7 targets in back-to-back games, and this Chargers defense is one that sells out to stop the wide receiver, and by doing so, they let the tight end go. So, I mean, you can see it with their rankings. They've given up the second fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers and the second most to tight ends. So, I think in cash, I prefer Dan Arnold at 100 more. But yeah, I don't mind Conklin at all, and in stacks and in one-offs as GPPs.
Yep, I like that as well. So we'll move on. We have 2 games left. We have Philly going against Denver. And yeah, to be honest, not a ton of interest on this game. We'll start on the Philly side. I think Jalen Hurts is somebody you have to mention pretty much every week because he's going to have that rushing yard upside. He's been fairly consistent this year for the most part. I'm averaging 23.3 DraftKings. Well, I think Hurts is definitely in play, 6,500, which that is pretty cheap. Like I said, for cash games, I'm probably going with Josh Allen as my quarterback, but Jalen Hurts is not a bad cash play any given week there. I think Dallas Goedert, a little bit on the pricey side for me, but I think he's in play as well. Those are kind of the 2 guys I'm looking at on the Eagles there. Kind of your thoughts on Hurts? Are you going to him a lot this week, or are you kind of staying away?
No, I have nobody from this game this week. I'm kind of with you. Dallas, like you said, the 2 that stand out the most. Goddard is fine just because since they traded Ertz, he's played 93% of the Eagles' snaps. So when you get a tight end running that many routes and on the field that much, he's always got a floor. But Denver's really strong at safety, and they're giving up the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends as a result. With this new run-heavy scheme Philadelphia's all of a sudden adopted, I would rather not pay up for Goddard and stay in that cheap range there. But we do see Goddard is carrying ownership, so if you played him, I wouldn't argue it, but I'm just not getting there.
Yep, I agree on Denver, and just no interest in Gordon Williams at running back. Not a ton of interest in Sutton 5,600, Judy 5,300. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't really see a ton in this game. So we'll kind of move on to the last game. We have Seattle going against Green Bay. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one. We'll start on the Seattle side. What are you liking on the Seattle side here?
This game all of a sudden shot up the charts as far as stack appeal goes with the 2 quarterbacks coming back. I think, unless I'm wrong, Jair Alexander is still out for Green Bay. If he's back, disregard what I say a little bit, but I still do like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to go way back up the wide receiver rankings with Green Bay's questionable secondary and Russell Wilson playing quarterback again. Not interested in the running backs. Chris Carson's out, which means we'll see Alex Collins, I guess, get the majority, but Rashad Penny cut into him a lot. I'm not really interested in those guys anyway, especially with Wilson playing and again being a little bit more pass heavy. How do you feel about Seattle, and what about Green Bay as well?
Yeah, I like those Metcalf and Lockett calls. Those are the 2 guys I'm going to be looking at. You could argue that they're too cheap. Lockett 6,500 and then Metcalf 6,800. I think that Wilson coming back obviously does help them a ton. So those are the kind of 2 guys I was looking at on Seattle. And then on the Green Bay side, it's going to be Devontae Adams. Was going to wait and see if Rodgers is coming back. Got word a couple days ago that he was planning on doing so, and he is back. So 7,900 for Devontae Adams. Yeah, I think it seems way too cheap. I mean, he was 8,900 just in Week 7 against Washington. He was 9,000 in Chicago in Week 6, and now he's 7,900, which I believe that is it's tied with the cheapest he's been all year. So why not take advantage here? I really do like Devontae Adams a lot. He's going to be the one guy I do look at on the Packers.
There's no way you fade Devontae Adams in cash this week. It was difficult before Dearness Johnson and Mark Ingram became things, but it's so easy to do now. And I'm just double checking. I'm pretty sure we're going to see him as the highest owned by a good amount. Yep, both sites, he's the highest owned by a good amount. That's not one I recommend going away from in cash at his prices. Like you said, 7,900, under 8,000 for a guy who's getting almost a 38% target share from Adams, and with his talent, that's kind of a gift. So I wouldn't pass it up.
Yep, 100%. I'm really high on Adams this week, and like you said, with all the value that's opened up throughout the week, it makes it pretty easy to get him in. So yeah, especially 7,900, sign me up there. Anything else sticking out to you in this game?
No, not really. I think we're going to wind up in a spot where Aaron Jones is not much owned, and he always has that kind of, yeah, well, it looks like 7%. 6,900, he's kind of too talented to be that cheap. But, this is the same thing again. I just don't really see the need to pay 6,900 for him when I can go up less than 1,000 more to get like Najee Harris and Eckler. And it's easy to do with those cheap running backs. So he hasn't made his way into any of my lineups.
Yep, I am with you there. But yeah, I think we covered about everything. Any final thoughts on the slate you want to mention?
Well, here, I'm going to give you a 2 for 2 on my own cash lineup. See what you prefer here. So as of right now, where it sits, would you go Matt Ryan and either McCaffrey or Taylor, or Dak Prescott and Eckler?
Whew. Yeah, I'd probably go with Matt Ryan and McCaffrey or Taylor there.
Yeah, that's
one
one that's been bugging me a little bit for a while now. It's probably going to go right down to the wire what the decision is made. I've been polling as many as I can, and most have been leaning your way too. So I think that might just be the way. But I don't have anything more on this slate. Watch for the inactives; they should be out within half an hour or so.
Yep, there's always something that comes out like last second, so check out for that. So we'll be back on Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then back out always on a Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning, bright and early. Good luck, everybody, for Week 10. We'll see you back next week for Week 11. See ya.